What's up, YouTube? This is T Quentin1. I'm working on my summer movie ranking right now, and I'll talk more about it in that vid. But safe to say, for me, The Odyssey is the movie of summer 2026. Well, of course, Spider Man is the highest grossing film. The webhead always does overperform. I'm certain nothing will touch it in terms of quality. And with the double act of Oppenheimer and The Odyssey, it's put Christopher Nolan back into my list of favorite directors. I think he's someone who has a really compelling style, but also someone who challenges himself with each film he makes. And seeing as how I think he's earned yet another blank check movie from the studio system, I thought it might be fun to offer some suggestions of projects he'd be a good fit for. Here are 5 things I want to see Chris Nolan do next, with the disclaimer that also an original non IP film would be pretty nice too, but that's no fun to speculate about. So here's the list. Number 5 is The Sinking of the Lusitania. Nolan has made a couple of historical movies, usually about war, but with a heavy focus on the everyday people caught in the crossfire or swept up in major historical events, which is why I think this true story would be just the movie to make Dunkirk and Oppenheimer into kind of a loose trilogy. On the off chance you don't know, the Lusitania was an English ocean liner that was torpedoed by a German U boat during the First World War. Notable because it was not a military vessel, much closer to a modern day cruise ship. Think of Titanic, but with concrete bad guys and a war thriller angle. There's a great nonfiction book by Eric Larson called Dead Wake that really fleshes out the whole event. And there are so many personal stories from that tragedy that I think could make for a great film. This would be a bit of a throwback to his earlier work, stuff like The Prestige and Memento, a taut, emotional powerhouse with plenty of opportunities for his unique story structure. Number 4 is Norse mythology, the most obvious follow up to the Odyssey, which immerses the viewer in myth more than any film I've ever seen. So I think it'd be cool to see him tackle a much more out there pantheon with a far stranger set of stories. Part of the reason the Norse gods have stuck around as figures of pop culture, and to be fair, actual culture too, is just how fucking weird they are. I think no one has it in him to get weird, and this could manifest as a couple of different genres. An action epic about the chaotic Ragnarok, for example, a film about Odin's quest for knowledge and the sacrifices he made, I think would pair beautifully with Nolan's last 2 films, or maybe a lighter tale. No one has a reputation for overpowering self seriousness. Adapting the misadventures of Thor, Loki, and their servants in the land of giants could be a way to break out of that stereotype. I think Christopher Nolan could do something really cool and unique with Norse mythology, and also I think the world is ready for a take on these characters that's completely divorced from either Marvel or God of War. Number 3, Blue Thunder. He recently did an interview where he mocked the idea of ever doing this, as it was rumored he was going to before the Odyssey was announced as his next project, but fuck it, I think this sounds badass. A remake of the 1983 Roy Schneider action thriller where 2 LAPD pilots are testing out a super advanced military helicopter gives a lot of material to some of Nolan's best instincts as an action director. He always has a great sense of space and momentum, and centering the action on something that's always moving, you just know he could make that look amazing. Think of the shifting hotel in Inception, or even the Batwing in The Dark Knight Rises. The log line of Top Gun, but with a sci fi helicopter, would be an automatic buy for me, regardless of who's in the director's chair. Helicopters are fucking sick. I mean, kind of seems like they're not very safe, but they're cool. I think they are much more dynamic and cinematic than planes, and no one hasn't made a traditional action film since Tenet. I wouldn't mind him making a fast, destructive, violent sci fi action film littered with aerial battles. I mean, am I crazy? Does that not sound tight as fuck? Number 2, The Prisoner. Out of everything on this list, this is the surest bet. He's been rumored to be hovering a reimagining of Patrick McGowan's mind bending 60s TV masterpiece many times. And if you've seen it, you know it had a profound impact on Nolan as a storyteller. Every movie he's ever made has a little piece of The Prisoner in it. And even though, at least in my opinion, the show is already a brilliant piece of work that doesn't exactly need an update, it would be a perfect marriage of creator and material. 6 feels very much like a Nolan protagonist already. a tough, no nonsense man forced to reckon with the depths of his own soul because of an impossible situation beyond his control. The very English mixture of unease and politeness also would play well with his repertoire. What would most excite me, though, is how he'd do the island. Seeing as how he reinvented the Cyclops and Circe, making them modern, visceral, and terrifying while not losing any of their inherent otherworldliness, makes me wonder what his new spin would be on the Rover, or all the various mind games and fake outs the show is famous for. Also, I'm just going to say it. He's got to put Pattinson in this one. He could be a good six. He'd be a great lead, but I'd be just as happy to see him as two, the villain, considering how much fun he was in the Odyssey. And number one is Summer of Night. This might seem like a pretty out of left field choice, and that's by design. Everything else on my list, especially The Prisoner, I can point to something else that no one has made that is on some level similar. There's ample evidence of him being able to pull it off, but bringing Dan Simmons' brilliant coming of age horror novel to the screen is unlike anything he's ever done, and that's why it's number one. The story of a group of elementary school kids in the early 60s who uncover a dark and terrifying secret inside their soon to be closed school is, without exaggeration, both one of the scariest books I've ever read and also one of the most emotionally resonant. It treads in a lot of the same ground as the kid focused section of Stephen King's It, but it's better, quite frankly, even if that feels like blasphemy as a King fan to say. I've long thought it was a novel that's begging to be adapted by any filmmaker. I mean, fuck Carrie. Where's the Mike Flanagan limited series of this? But I do think Nolan would bring something truly special to a film version of this book. Firstly, Nolan has become a more heartfelt filmmaker as he's gotten older. While his films are still grim and cynical, there's an emotional catharsis to the latter half of his career that means I think he'd be a unique director for such a potent story. Second, there's an undercurrent to Nolan's work, especially recently, of regret and decay, which I do think would fit with the once proud and now dying town of Elm Haven, Illinois. Finally, he can do horror. Even if he's never made something that specifically occupies that genre, everyone at my screening was terrified of the Cyclops. And look at what he was able to do with the Joker, turning a character that broad into something downright nightmarish. Summer of Night is a brilliant novel, maybe Simmons' best work, at least in my opinion, and it could absolutely make a great film all on its own, but I think it could make for a career defining work if it was put in the hands of Christopher Nolan. Well, that was my list. If you have any other films you'd like to see Chris Nolan tackle, let me know in the comments. Hope you enjoyed it. This is T Quinton 1 signing out.